That just went over KFSK. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We're getting started a little bit late, and one of our members has an appointment at 9:30, so that gives us an hour. I think how we'll approach this is we'll separate the two topics of today's meeting is about proposed borough contribution for Petersburg mental health. We'll address that first, and then the Petersburg School District, just to make it, separate the two. And I think since there's only four of us here, it takes four to pass anything. I think what we'll do, it looks like there's a lot of people here that would like to talk to the topic, so if we don't get a motion and a second for either of them, then it'll just be status quo. It'll stay like it's proposed in the budget until the first reading, which I believe is in March.
Yes, sir.
So I will entertain a motion at this time to talk about the borough contribution for Petersburg mental health. Do I hear a motion for that? Okay. So it looks like, would anybody like to comment on that from the public? We'll give the public comment period 20 minutes since we have an hour. Anybody like to comment on it? It looks like with no motion or no second, like I said earlier, it just gets proposed like it
as
was
is.
Put to the assembly in the budget as is. So since we can't discuss that item, we will entertain a motion to discuss the budget for the Petersburg School District. Entertain a motion to have that discussion. So, not getting a motion for that, we can't discuss it. I guess entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Unless people want to have a public comment, that's how we have to address the. Thought we were going to have some discussion here this morning and debate myself. The clerk never did call the roll. We better do that.
Okay.
I'm just babbling on. Yeah.
Nancy.
Excused.
Mark.
Here.
Kurt.
He's excused. He's not feeling well.
Jay.
Here.
Cindy.
Here.
John.
Here.
Bob.
He's excused. Weathered out in Duncan Canal. So, would anybody like to make a comment? Sure.
I guess my
Gene,
question is,
could you come to the podium and state your name and who you represent, please? We are having a meeting. We're just not discussing the two items that were on the agenda, I guess.
Hi, I'm Jean Ellis, School Board President. And actually, my question is, can this come back up again at the first hearing of the budget?
It could come up at
A motion could be made at that time. So probably this is our opportunity to talk about it, even though, unless we come to that one.
On the second reading in ordinance form will also be the public hearing.
Okay.
So that's another time you can do it. But we have an hour until Mr. Greger has to be to an appointment. So
Maybe since we're here, we should talk a little bit.
feel free.
Okay. I wrote out what I said, I'm going to say, because when I'm upset, I sometimes get anyway, I thought this would be better this way. Okay.
I'm sure we'll all be civil.
Oh, yes, I know you will. Hi, I'm School Board President Jean Ellis. I'm very upset that you are considering reducing the borough's share of the school district funding by 17%. Seems that the more frugal and financially conscientious we are, the more someone thinks they need the money more than we do. Thanks to the forward thinking of the school board, with lots of encouragement from board member Jim Swartz, the Borough Fund 240 School National Forest Receipts had a 2014 year-end savings total of $3,957,752. In 2008, the school board agreed to tighten our belts and continue to only ask for a total of $1.8 million per year in order to build up the National Forest Receipts Saving Fund for the future. At the time we came to the agreement, most members of the City Council did not believe we would be able to go this long without asking for additional funding. Instead of standing here fighting to have the $200,000 allocated to us, we should be being praised by the Assembly for being able to stick to our part of the plan. The plan, as set in place, included a provision that the city would increase the general fund amount allocated to the school and decrease the amount taken from the National Forest Receipts Fund, so when Congress quit providing the annual payment, the entire city share of school funding would be coming from the general fund. We stuck to our part of the bargain, but the city did not. Over the last 10 years or longer that you have flat funded the school, the borough has steadily increased the rates the school pays for garbage, water, sewer, and electricity. Some other communities don't charge their schools for utilities. That is a way for them to contribute even more than the funding cap to their schools. During the fight over borough formation, one thing that the residents living outside the former city boundaries said is that they would be willing to pay for schools. Now you are not only taxing them, you are considering giving less of that money to the school. We have an elected school board, and it is our job to oversee the school budget. I think we have done a fantastic job of that over the past few years. It really concerns me that a member of the Assembly now thinks he knows better than those of us who have been elected by the people of Petersburg to manage the school budget. In closing, please provide the school with the requested $1.2 million from the Borough of Petersburg's General Fund and $600,000 from the federal timber receipts. Thank you.
Any questions of Jean? Thank you, Jean.
Okay.
Anybody else like to comment on either of the two? Jim? Subjects on our agenda today?
Jim Schwartz, former school board person. One of the things that these kinds of opportunities, I guess we'll call them, is to go back and look at some of the things that go into school budgets and city budgets. And so there was some interesting data I think we were able to find from the website of the Alaska Department of Education. And so I wanted to share with you the information that we found. I think it's just for future reference, as you get a sense, to get a perspective of how we are doing in terms of our contributions to the school district as compared to other communities. Because I think sometimes we don't get that opportunity to compare. And so you'll notice on here what we've done is there is a maximum local effort that the state determines for all the cities based on their valuations and their size, and lots of factors go into that. And then they have, they use that, that's kind of a benchmark that you can kind of measure your contributions toward. So what I did is I divided the local contribution that we have, that we make as a community, against what the maximum is, just to get a percentage. And then we compared that over time. And if you go to the far right, the column, this was from the legislature that they printed out as part of their publications. It was the average local effort as compared to the maximum they could give from 2004 to 2013. See that on the right? So then that was the percentage, and they had this all listed out. Petersburg is listed at 67%. So for those years, it contributed 67% toward the max.
Jim, can
Sure.
Is your calculation just compared to the local tax or the full local effort?
The full local effort.
Okay, I just want to make
full
sure.
local effort, 1.8
Right.
is that column. Wrangell was at 90% during that time, Cordova at 100%, Haines at 87, Juneau at 98, Ketchikan at 83, Kodiak Island at 91, Sitka at 72, and Unalaska at 100%.
Another question for
Sure.
you. Did you include the allocation for personal property tax, which is what the state does when they do this? They include the full, when they go to do that calculation, they
Yeah.
assume, because they do this to us all the time.
You're right.
They assume that it's our local choice not to tax the fleet, for example.
Right.
So,
No property,
so
personal
they hold
property
that
tax.
against us when they do this calculation.
Yeah, I don't know, what we've said in terms of the maximum local effort, is that's what it is? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
the state looks at that and they say the full, basically they hold the fact that we've made a local decision not to tax personal property, and they hold that against the community. So when they go to calculate their max effort, they include a personal property tax in it and say, you know what, you've chosen not to do that, so therefore
But
we're going to say your percentage is less.
Right, but we could.
That would be up to
I'm
the
just saying,
community.
that's an
true.
option,
Sure,
right?
and that is exactly.
Other communities can do that or not.
Correct.
So I'm just saying, however it's done, it's our potential versus other potential, if I'm correct. Yes.
I don't know if the formulas Dee's talking about or anything, but that road's been tried to been gone down a couple times.
Oh, sure,
Tax the
sure.
fishing fleet,
And
do we
that's
want
not
to?
the issue
Right.
that I wanted to bring up. I'm
Right.
just saying, this is how we compare with other communities
Mm-hmm.
and how those communities are funding against that number, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
And it just is. That's how, and I think it's a relatively fair, because some communities choose to do the whole thing and some don't. So it's just a matter of choice, community choice, right? So, but I'm just saying, within that, that's how the percentages lie. So then, if you look at FY11, that's the middle column there, you have then that percentage is, we have given 65%
of the max.
of the
effort.
max, you know. Now, you'll notice there's a little parentheses, the 43 there. Now, if you look at the local actual tax dollars from Petersburg that are put into that, the $1.2 million from our tax dollars, not the Secure Rural Schools, then that figures at 43%. So that I think that's also a perspective that we're trying to understand in terms of how much community money actually is there. And then as you go down, notice everything is dropped as well, but we were at 67 and it's 65 in this year. So, and the other percentages are still higher than ours. If you go to FY13, which is the last audited amounts that we could get, the amount is 59%. And if you take the 1.2 million, that's 39%. But as of FY13, Wrangell is at 76%, Cordova is at 91%, Haines at 80%, Juneau at 100%, Ketchikan at 73%, Kodiak Island at 76%, Sitka at 65%, and Unalaska at 100 plus. I share that with you just in the sense to keep a perspective. I know that there's lots of stresses and strains, and we're going to look into this next go-around as having its own sense of stress on our budgets. What I'm trying to point out is even at the level that we are going, the 1.8, which we committed to as a school district, it tends to represent the lowest contribution from communities than most other than villages. But in comparable kinds of things, we're at a low, what we're asking from the community is at a level lower than, by far, well, lower than other communities. And they're somehow making it work, if you understand what I mean. If you're in Wrangell and you've committed 76% of your bill, your max, somehow they're making that happen. You know, they're doing it. So I guess what I'm trying to get you to get a clear picture is the school system, I think, is doing well. But it's also doing well within the range of not as much of a impact. So it seems to me that the efficiency that you're seeing with that system is considerable. And I think that if you put that in that perspective, you have to understand it has to be. We have to be, because we're lower than others and we're doing as good or better in terms of how we service kids. And so please keep that in mind as you struggle to try and figure out how these budgets are going, and realizing, well, somehow we need to cut back, we need to do whatever we can. I don't think you're going to find a better bargain, and you haven't had a better bargain for years. So that's my thoughts.
Just
Thanks,
kind of
Jim.
one
Sure.
statement, and this is to your point. I can speak to Wrangell and Cordova. I've been to both places. first of all, I'm not in favor of cutting the school budget, so I'll be right up front. I mean, I
Sure.
think the 1.8 is a good number for the moment, and I'll get to that. You know, I'd stack up our amenities against Wrangell and Cordova any day of the week, like the aquatic center, the community gym,
Oh,
you know, our parks and rec operation, our library. And in a sense, those things benefit. I mean, we don't charge the school for use of those things, you know, and basically, so it's really, it starts to get really difficult when we look at these dollars. I mean, that's the conversation that Eric and I have talked about, to say, you know, in the off-season kind of thing, let's get together and try to figure out how do we tackle this where the state is cutting funding to everybody. I mean, it's not just our rolling total right now is about 1.2 million. The borough is going to get less from state and federal sources with this upcoming budget year. Okay,
Right.
I know the school's going to be facing that from their own hit from the state funding. Whereas a community, we're not going to get very far fighting with each other. We're going to have to get together and how do we make this work where we're not having to talk about shutting the aquatic center down or so on. I mean, and that's the piece that I think is really important. You know, that kind of conversation where we come up with a long-term plan. How are we going to replace the loss of $600,000 a year from secure rural schools? I mean, so when we talk about percentages, it's great. Talk about real dollars. We give more real dollars to our school than Wrangell does. Yeah, it may be a different percentage, but it's a budget issue, meaning our budget's bigger because we offer a lot more to the community than Wrangell does. Same with Cordova. And those are those conversations, I think, I mean, hell, we scheduled a meeting, you came in and are responding, and that's wonderful. And I think that's the kind of community conversation we're going to need to have to try to fight through this.
well, that was the next, the next point was, in terms of a benefit of such a discussion, our own thinking, had chance to talk with each other, and to realize the need. And the need, actually, we talked about earlier, a year ago before
Yeah.
borough formation was, we needed to get together and review what a previous council had already committed itself to.
Yeah.
And realize that with the budget, I mean, with the borough formation, we were trying to get a clear picture of how that is, but we didn't have that conversation last year. And I think maybe what the process is that we have an obligation, because we know this $600,000 is going to go away. We have an obligation to not let that happen in a way that's going to
Hurt the community
We will
as a
make,
whole.
we need to make those adjustments. I would like to see out of this a commitment by the board, by the council, to simply schedule a meeting sooner rather than later, because this will be, because we have to do it right. We have to get it right. We can't afford that. Secure rural schools is going away. I mean, we said that before, and it's through magical political processes, it kept going, but we can't figure that. So that's
And I've been on this board this is my 9th year, and I've gone through the discussions and seen how the school board was frugal, and I commend them for that, for having $3.9 million in the bank right now. If that's what the secure rural schools funding is left there. So we have a couple years to look at this problem, but we do need to have the discussions. I mean, the governor came out with his budget yesterday, and he's talking about cutting Department of Corrections jails around the state, 15 of them, $9 million. Well, that's another $320,000 hit to the borough. So it's a big picture, and we do have to work together, because education is very important in my opinion, and I'm not in favor of cutting the school budget. We have a balanced budget this year. So we came to this discussion because of at our last meeting, it was on the agenda, and there was a motion made, and it was a 4-3 vote to have the discussion on these two public services. So here we are, and but we do have to, in my opinion, keep this dialogue going and plan for, you know, what do we want to give up to keep the level of education where it is, or road maintenance, or building maintenance, or library hours, or, I mean, you guys, it's just my opinion, so we're in a tough time.
And just one more additional thing, just because it's such a politically, we know that there's going to be, that things are going to get tougher. I think we have to keep an open mind, even with ourselves, that things that have not been on the table before be on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would encourage the people that we encourage our legislators to think the same way, that our moment of glory in the sun with oil reserves and that sort of thing be, if we're looking at, if we're expecting other people to look at the whole picture, then we ought to as well.
Thanks.
We're kind of getting around to what I was, hoping to talk about. And it's not that everything in the budget's a sacred cow. There isn't anything we're going to bring up that isn't going to upset somebody. And I think we do have to, as Mark and Steve were talking about, start being very proactive and planning for the future rather than just saying, and I don't even know if we're going to say this, well, we need this amount of money, so let's raise taxes. And one of the things that I'd like to see is how much per student each of these districts are spending. We spend about $30,000 per student. And, just based on 425 students and about $12 million, just doing the dividing.
Well,
If you want to make a
careful.
comment, let's do it at the
25
microphone,
to
please.
30,000.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, I'm not saying that's wrong, because the school district's doing a great job, as you're saying. And we have excellent teachers and excellent administrators, but, half our state budget is unfunded. We're over $6 billion, $3.5 billion it's not there. And I don't know how many of you are here in '88 when, the oil prices really dumped. Thousands of people lost their jobs and their homes. And we need to be, again, like everything's a sacred cow, so no one wants to cut anywhere. But we do need to be proactive and think about tomorrow. And, I do appreciate all the things you've done, and the school is doing, the administrators and the teachers are unbelievable. So, I do want to support them, and I think part of supporting them is being proactive and looking at what we can do to keep what we have and do it more economically.
well,
Any,
we need to create a date then,
Yeah.
if we could.
yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Anybody else like to comment? I'm sure there is. We're going to have to save some of the time. Maybe at 9 o'clock we'll start talking Petersburg Mental Health. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Ginger
Thanks.
Evans,
Thanks, Ginger.
community member for 21 years now, which is almost half my life, and I've born and raised in Alaska. I've seen the good and I've seen the bad. Grew up in Anchorage during the oil boom and knew when things got tough, but one thing that's a constant in our state is education, and it needs to be in the forefront. If we're looking at ways, and we were doing a big study as a community as economic development, what are we going to do in the future, trying to look at new and innovative ways to bring people to our community, have businesses, opportunities for our young people as those who have invested in our community. The education we're providing at Petersburg School District is probably one of the best. I mean, it is the best in Alaska. I would not send my kids anywhere else. According to a recent survey, elementary school is number 1 in the state, middle school is number 2, and the high school was in the top 20, which is phenomenal for the size of school we have, the staffing that we have prudently done a lot to, with our own budget, when you talk about being fiscally responsible, we have done that as a district. We have cut. We have not hired back when teachers have retired. We have taken on different hats and roles that might have stretched us in what we were trained to do as a teacher, but we look at it and say, this is what's best for kids. And we wake up every morning, we put a smile on our face, and we go in our classrooms to work with every single kid. And we are there. We are there when students lose parents and they come back to our building even after they've graduated because they know it's a safe place to be. They want to engage and connect with us. I mean, last night I was touched when I went to Bentley's memorial to see as many staff members that had Bentley in middle school or high school were there to support the family. These kids that come through those doors mean a lot to us. And we keep doing what we're doing because of the kids. And we want them to be part of our community. We want there to be jobs for them. And we're trying to provide the skills that they need. And we've done that through budget cuts and saying, okay, we're going to have to tighten up. Class sizes have increased in the high school to numbers that I think would surprise the community. We are not able to offer as many course offerings because we've made those cuts, and it's getting really tight to make a schedule for our students. you know, with the variety of classes we would like to offer. We have made cuts where we've gone from 2.4 English teachers in the high school to now where we have like 1.2, and we still have the same required classes. In the elementary school, they have combined classes because to adjust for the numbers of students in those classes. The teacher's going, this is what needs to be done, we're going to do it. You know, I guess I don't really see where I understand we all have to make sacrifices, but I don't see that we have a lot of extra in the budget. And we have done things for the betterment of our, you know, the kids, because that's what comes first and foremost. So, yeah, we're willing to have discussions, but I feel personally when their balanced budget is presented and we have our finance director is saying this is what we can do and we're going to support the school at what they're requesting. We have a city manager that's doing that and saying we can do this. That it is really hard to hear that, nope, we need to potentially cut another X amount of dollars out of the school budget when the people that are employed within the borough to make those decisions and put forth a balanced budget, and they've done that. It's really hard to understand why we have to go through this. We were just here a year ago talking about we need to have these discussions, and honestly, I've had discussions with maybe 1 or 2 borough assembly members about the role and what's happening in the school. Nobody else has come to talk to me. So when you're talking about I have my pulse on the community, I have my ability to know what people are thinking, where the cuts need to come, you're not talking to me. You haven't talked to my husband, who's a contributing member of this community and has been for 50 years. So if you want to see what's going on in the school, come to the school. See what the amazing things we're doing with the kids on a daily basis.
Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger, just a quick comment for you. You touched on something I feel is pretty important about the quality of service given to our kids. Something that I get stuck on is we live in a small island on the edge of the Pacific, and we have the #1 technology school in the state of Alaska. And we talk about the things that are important to us, and yeah, with our budget and this small community, we've been able to achieve that. And in short, I completely agree with you. I think the idea of reducing school funding at this time isn't appropriate, and what you guys are doing with funds, again, as evidenced by the #1 technology school in the state, is truly amazing. That's all. I guess I didn't have a question, just that comment for you.
Any assembly members have another comment, or anybody else? We've got time for one more comment on the school side of things here. If anyone.
Chris Fry from the Petersburg Planning Commission. Just wanted to give you guys an update on the comprehensive plan. And one of the themes that seems to be coming out in the community surveys and in what's been discussed so far is that the schools are really important to this community. And it's one of the higher things that people are saying, that it's really important to them, particularly in Service Area 1, and even people outside of Service Area 1. It's showing up that there's a divide there. Outside of Service Area 1, it depends on where they live. If they're off island, it's not real important. If they're on island, it is really important. So I just wanted to touch base on that. I think it would be really not a good decision at this time to cut funding to the school district. Thank you.
Chris. Okay, is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment on the contribution for the Petersburg mental health budget side? It looks like at this point,
Mr. Mayor, if I may
finish my.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
It looks at this point, and that kind of looks to me like we probably shouldn't even have this meeting. And it was brought up in the format of our last agenda, and we voted to. It was brought up to address the budget for these 2 public services, and I didn't vote in favor of it. I believe, like Ginger does, that the finance director and the staff here have put together a balanced budget, and yes, we are going to have financial troubles in the future, but and we need to have some discussions how we're going to address that. I said that earlier, but at this point, I can't see changing the proposed budget for this year. So if there's no one in the audience that wants to talk about the mental health budget, seeing that we're at this point we're not planning on cutting it. Cindy?
I guess I need to get the microphone I just wanted to make one quick comment. I got a chance to talk to the school staff yesterday, and I've talked to mental health staff as well. And I appreciate that we had this discussion because I learned some things that I didn't know about both. And I was reminded that the two work together, particularly with suicide prevention. And I thank you very much for your time and your effort and all the information that you've shared. I think the public needs to know more about what you do. And I feel like I'm much better informed, and I was impressed with both. I'm even more impressed now, and I think you work very hard to have efficiencies, and you provide a very good service to the public. So I just wanted to make that comment.
So, since we have another half an hour of assembly member time, would anybody like to comment more on the school issue? Or if not, I'll entertain them. Erica, sure.
So in my new job, hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I guess I just do want to, I almost want to just say, let's all take a breath here this morning, because as my friend Jay actually reminded me, this was a discussion. And so I appreciated Cindy coming up actually yesterday and having an opportunity to put a little face to it. And I guess that's just what I want to do really quickly too, is just to say that this is about real people. This is my 14th year here, and I'm heavily invested in the community and in the school district. So I'm very passionate about it and was willing to even step up into this role in the midst of some controversy, which I think maybe even is playing into some of the discussion here today, or maybe was part of that, I don't know. But I'm here and I'm staying, and I'm committed to seeing this through, as is the rest of our staff here. So I do appreciate the support and the balanced budget that was presented and the positive comments that were made here today. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. John, do you have a comment?
Just one, Eric, I really appreciate you moving up into the position, because for me, it's the first time we've had someone there that's made a commitment to the community. You've done an unbelievable job in the elementary school, and you really, you and the other principals have been a real model for the school district and for the community. And like, there isn't any activity I go to that I don't see, you guys involved in it, and which is a nice change. And I really, hope you do consider the superintendent position, because that would be a first for us. And you bought a home here, your kids go here, and being an elementary principal for 16 years, I haven't seen anybody better at it than you. And I really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you, John.
And the only reason I do bring these things up is because I think, as a member of the assembly, I do think we should question different fiscal policies. And I know people are really upset with what had occurred, and that would pay someone not to come here. Yeah. But the best thing about it is you're in the position. So I thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Kim?
Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
Hi, I'm Kim Kilkenny. I work for Petersburg Mental Health, and I wanted to comment on the big picture. Last week, I got to speak at the public health conference about our work that we do with underage drinking, and while I was there, I attended several of the conference topics. One thing that we do know is that nicotine is down. We've conquered that. Obesity is number one, so I'm so thankful for Ginger and the work that they're doing with the obesity grant in the schools. But the other thing that they were focusing on, and a lot of economic professionals were discussing, was the best return rate we get on the dollar is our investment in kids. And by the time that they're age 5, at least this is the stats that we know, at least by the time they're age 5, a third of them have already experienced adverse childhood experiences. That includes living with a substance abuser, divorce, parent goes to prison, not enough to eat, physical or emotional abuse, or witnessing domestic violence, or neglect, emotional neglect. And so they're taxed with not only educating, but also working with these kids that have already experienced these traumas. So again, it's looking at the big picture, not just we're just funding the school, but we also have to look at the entire community and how do we support families, how do we support the kids, how do we support parents, and how do we support the community. So I just appreciate that we are able to find a balanced budget and that there's lots of talk of let's talk about this together, because, it is something we can do as a community. And a budget cut or, funding just with one thing isn't going to fix all the problems, but working together, I think that we could do a fabulous job. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Anybody else like to speak? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for taking the time.